we are, I think, a week away from the Chancellor announcing the spending review, which is all of this spending for all government departments, basically all the way to the next general election for the next 3 years. So it's a big deal. And she has some good news, spending on local transport. But as The Guardian says, to placate fractious Labour MPs. And there's also some fractious Labour cabinet ministers.
Yes. Apparently, negotiations between the Home Office and the Treasury are going poorly. And the Home Office, of course, in charge of the police. And now we have another letter seen by the Times. It's Metropolitan Police boss Mark Rowley saying, OK, you decide which crimes we're going to investigate.
If you take your mind back a few years when Theresa May was Home Secretary and the then Chancellor George Osborne imposed cuts, they lost 20,000 police officers. For my mind, it did terrible, permanent damage to policing in this country, communities, cohesion, but it also huge damage to the Conservative Party's reputation as a party of law and order. They reap what they sow if they go down this route. Mark Rowley is warning very clearly that police officers will not be able to do it. They might have to lose jobs. The Met's already under pressure about losing police officers. What, from the front line at a time when crime is rising?
I was actually Shadow Home Secretary at the time when they made those announcements. And it was almost as though they thought, you know, it was 20% cuts in police funding.
It was terrible.
And it was like, yeah, but the police don't need all these people.
The Home Secretary went to the Police Federation and faced them down and said, you're exaggerating the case.
I don't think David Cameron and George Osborne had any idea at the time how much that was going to politically hit them. Ended up with Boris Johnson doing a big U-turn on police numbers later.
Yeah, it's because they started with financial figures and then said, right, we want to save this money, and then didn't really work through the consequences. And policing, law and order, the court system are part of the fabric of the country. It's how we live our lives, and it really matters. And I think they go back to austerity, call it austerity 2.0, call it what you like, is not what Labour promised at the last general election. Labour promised change, and it would improve key public services and raise people's standards of living. Standards of living are actually rising to some extent, not as fast as people clearly want, but public services are not going to get better if you're going to be reducing the money, because you can shout as much as you like, the Chancellor, about efficiency and make it better. And I've heard chancellors throughout the ages shouting this, but you need money to revitalise public services that have been run into the ground. And policing and the court system have been run into the ground by the last lot. And if Labour's going to revive them, they're not going to revive them by giving them less money.
No.
It's just not going to work.
And, of course, standard of living includes whether you feel safe and critically includes whether you feel that if you call 999 when a crime has been committed against you and you want to report it, that the police are going to come out. And I think people already feel that there are some crimes where the police don't attend, where they, you know, maybe don't take it as seriously, or it feels like they don't prioritise it. And basically, if the Met Police Chief is saying, well, that's going to continue on a greater scale, that's pretty frightening. And
we all know anecdotally, so just the other week a friend told me about a lady in her 80s with a shopping trolley, mugged by two women. Trolley goes, she's distraught, they call the police, say, we're not coming.
But this goes to the dilemma of policing, because you know, if you are the police and your budgets are really under pressure, what you do is you prioritise the most serious crimes, the most dangerous individuals. But if you are somebody who cares about whether they feel safe walking down their road, what you want is neighbourhood police who you see, who are around, who are visible. The Prime Minister's commitment to neighbourhood policing, you know, whatever the number is, it's 13,000 more neighbourhood police officers. That is because people want to see police officers. But the Met will say, if the budgets are under pressure, that's not our priority. We're not going to put neighbourhood police in when we've got to tackle the most dangerous crimes. And that it all comes to whether the government can deliver what it's promised.
You understand why they prioritise murders and rapes and crimes of that nature. But if you're living in a community and there's somebody vandalising your car all the time, or kicking the gate in on your, on your garden, it does. It really matters. And I think they're false economies in the end, because you're not improving people's lives. And it should be, if you're in government, it should all be about improving people's lives and all the different ways you do that. And the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is fighting her corner. So
not the only one.
So is Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
Housing, communities, local government, massive impact on our lives. And Ed Miliband at energy, because that investment will bring down bills in the longer term. That's what it will do.
He wants to insulate millions of homes.
Yeah.
Well,
it will
save
people. Yeah.
It
also wants to whack us with even more green taxes.
It saves people money if their homes are insulated and we have cheaper, secure, renewable energy rather than relying on gas and oil.
Yeah, because the government, of course, promised that over the course of the Parliament, energy bills would go down by £300.
Yeah, but I think when you...
Next Parliament now.
No,
yeah,
it's
no sign of that happening.
That promises would be lower than they would otherwise be. There were always T and C's attached to that, which gets lost in an election campaign.
I don't remember the T's and C's in the election campaign.
No, you don't. I mean, that's the problem.
Well, and another thing that the government, of course, promised was to smash the gangs when it comes to the crossings across the Channel. Your paper this morning says it's ridiculous to blame the weather for the surging crossings. I mean, the fact of the matter is good weather does lead to more
Who'd
crossings.
have thought it, Susanna?
So it's you can't really say that that's false.
But we now know, courtesy of the Home Office, they've published a list of red days when the weather's good and bad. Who'd have thought that when the weather is good, more migrants cross the Channel?
Yeah.
But what this survey, but what the Mail has dug into the figures, which showed when there were red days, when the Rwanda option was available.
Well, it wasn't an option, was it? Because no one was doing Rwanda. But it was just a sort of policy that never got put into effect.
I think you're being very unfair. I think 4 people voluntarily went.
Well, I thought it was only 2.
On package holidays.
Was it 2 or 4?
It was, anyway, despite Ed
how many hundreds of thousands did it cost to each one?
Andrew,
the current Home...
You're drowning. Sorry. You're drowning here.
Despite Ed's
you're drowning.
Can I finish, please?
Yeah,
the Home Office has no deterrent whatsoever at the moment. And Rwanda, we're saying on some of those days, when it was the red days, the weather was good, the numbers were down.
Don't you think, Andrew, we should agree? You need a deterrent.
You do.
Rwanda clearly was not a deterrent because it didn't work at all.
Well, it didn't.
The issue is what deterrent can the government...
Of course, they were going to do Albania, Ed, weren't they, this lot? Oh, yeah, but they didn't clear it with the Albanian president.
Hang on.
Laughed in the Prime Minister's face.
That went well.
Good Lord. Standing next to him saying, yeah, we're going to have a deal with our Albanian president, says, no, you're not. We don't want your...
The last government did a deal. The last government did a deal with Albania on return.
Yeah.
Well, it was one of the worst prime ministerial trips I've ever seen.
Stage managed.
You arrive in Albania, do a press conference, and then he disagrees with you.
The president is 6'7", towering above. He says, "I'm sorry, mate, you're not having your migrants here." You think Albania cleared that first?
What I'm saying to you is Albania clearly hasn't worked so far.
The thing about
Rwanda didn't work.
Bosnia-Herzegovina next, I hear.
What is
Where next?
What is the deterrent?
Why don't we try Iceland?
Oh, that's in your head.
Where else can we go? Bosnia-Herzegovina, they're talking about now.
That's the question I'm asking. What do you think the answer is? What do you think we can actually do? What is the deterrent? I mean, look, nobody serious thinks we can go back to Rwanda. So what is the thing which you can actually do?
Stop them leaving French water.
Well, I think that is right.
But hang on,
that is right. But the law's got to change in France for that. That's right.
But you're quite right. But that's the whole smash the gangs strategy. And the last government agreeing to pay £500 million to the French to try and police the launch of...
Some of our border police... see if we can get our border police on French soil to work alongside our magnificent French colleagues and puncture the dinghies.
I always love it when Andrew returns to European cooperation as the solution. Let's work more closely with our fellow members of the European Union. Oh, hang on a sec.
If only it was a family of nations we could join and work with.
They never cooperated with us on this when we were in the EU.
That is true.
So why would they cooperate now?
Well, actually, I think they're cooperating more now than they were.
See, that's not true. Because, one, the Dublin Convention, there was a returns programme.
Didn't work.
And Amber Rudd, when she was Home Secretary, talked about hundreds of people going back. But the cooperation stopped people coming across in lorries and on trains in huge numbers, which is what used to happen. And because David Blunkett was one of the Home Secretaries in the last Labour government, and they sorted it. Tory former ministers walked me through it and says, don't bank on Labour not fixing this because they fixed the problem last time.
Well, they haven't this time.
You can't do it overnight.
And we've seen, despite the Prime Minister talking about returns of 30,000 people, actually the numbers the numbers who've been returned who crossed the Channel is down.
But deportations are up.
of others, but we're talking about the Channel. The Channel migrant crossing there are totemic about everything that's wrong, and it's a real problem. It makes people very angry, and the numbers of people being returned from Channel crossing is sharply down under this lot, and the numbers crossing the Channel sharply up under this lot.
One of the reasons, once people get across, they're found to have a legitimate reason to be here as a refugee.
Well, why don't they bring their papers with them?
Because they have escaped countries which are in civil war, some of which we've been over and bombed.
What, France?
No, it's not France. You know how the system works. You know, under the 1951 United Nations Refugee Convention, you can pass through another safe country. You can pull out of the United Nations now as well.
Can I just ask?
Probably would.
Because a lot of people watching will think, okay, you know, there's a lot of sort of angry politics here.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be a lot of, and also finger-pointing, and I'm not sure that that's helpful.
No, but look, it's all heat. There's no life for me.
OK, but can I ask a question? France is a safe country.
Yep.
And these migrants have made their way from probably very dangerous countries, but they've got to France, which is a safe country. So the question repeatedly not answered is, why do they then put themselves at risk to leave France to come to the UK in these small boats? And we know that that's a potentially fatal journey. And when, goodness, you know, God forbid, when children get on those boats, why are they not staying in France?
Yeah,
and can we not somehow have a cooperation agreement with France where they do?
We did when we were in the European Union, because, they've probably travelled through Greece and Italy, possibly Germany, to get to France. They want to come to the UK.
Because?
Because they often have family members here. They have family members here, as often. And we also have a very deregulated labour market, much more so than elsewhere.
So they have family connections and they're likely to get work eventually once their asylum
they're not coming for benefit, they're coming for work. Now, France has far more refugees, asylum seekers than the UK has. Many, many more. People can give the impression that we're somehow exceptional and we get far more people coming here than other countries. That isn't the case.
OK, so if France already has more, is it that France actually is perfectly happy to see them leave French waters and make the trip over to the UK? Because they feel like we take more than our fair share. Why doesn't the UK do its part?
You can imagine that is the case. If it was going the other way, what would we be doing? You could imagine if they were leaving the UK to go to France, you would say the police in Kent, well, you have to do your job, but some of them who live locally in that area, those police officers will know there's some hostility towards those people. So how hard would they try? That's always been a question.
And some of those
get
migrants,
relatively few.
Some of those migrants crossing the Channel, where it comes coming from countries of terror, those well-known terror spots, Vietnam and India.
Deportation,
for heaven's sake.
But deportation.
For heaven's sake.
But they are refused. They are refused.
Vietnam is where big deportations have been.
Exactly, but of course he's ignoring that, or maybe he just doesn't know.
But it goes to the point Andrew made, which is that in the end, we're going to have to find a way in which we can have an effective deterrent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the issue is what that is. It wasn't Rwanda, and it doesn't seem to be Albania. But are we going to find a way in which you can... I mean, the Italians have been trying to do this with Albania. Is that, in the end, going to be...
Well, the courts have tied up Albania, have tied up Italy in knots on the Albanian deal.
But, of course, in Rwanda was a one-way deportation, an exiling. It never worked, £700 million we wasted. But it allowed people on the right just to shout Rwanda instead of trying to tackle a problem. In Italy... they would go for processing. If they're found to legally be entitled to seek asylum in Italy, they would be returned. That wasn't the case with Rwanda. But the truth is, some people who come are from Afghanistan. Some of them have worked with our armed forces, when the Afghan armed forces. We don't allow legal routes in. You have to create some safe and legal routes, and then the way to deal with the rest, the others, is, one, try and stop the boats, but when the people get here, process them quickly. Now, there are some people you can return. The success that Sunak had, which he never really wanted to shout about because he said he was going to stop the boats and he couldn't, was his deal with Albania, which is, of course, a NATO country. A large number of people were coming over. I think it was 10 or 12,000 in 1 year. And then all of a sudden, Albania agreed, yes, they would go back.
They would take them back,
but you have problems. What happens if people come from Iran?
Yes.
Are you going to send them? Yeah, exactly. And you've got to accept.
It feels like an intractable problem. And, the Tories claim Rwanda, even though it never got up and running beyond the 4 people, as you say, that volunteered, the graph that the Tories have come up with tracks the fact that when Rwanda was floating as a policy, that it was a deterrent. But, it never came in, and it doesn't exist at the moment.
I don't think that graph withstands intellectual interrogation.
Well,
looking at
currently, nothing seems to work, and the argument goes on. There is a horrifying story on the front of the Daily Mirror, your paper this morning, Kevin. This is a mum whose daughter had her benefits withdrawn and then took her own life. The woman who died, Jodie Whiting, she's a mum of 9 and a grandmother as well. She suffered multiple health conditions, physical and mental. And the original inquest hadn't acknowledged the role of the withdrawal of benefits. Then her mum campaigned for 8 years, and finally that link was established. And the message from mum Joy Dove says, "I lost my girl, think again on cuts." I mean, it's quite a horrifying warning, isn't it? And we just to establish, the Department for Work and Pensions acknowledged that it had been a mistake to withdraw this woman's benefits.
No, it's a terrible error. That happened under the last Conservative era, but I'm sure there'll be cases in the Labour era, particularly if mistakes are made and people taking their lives with often other complex reasons, but nevertheless you lose your livelihood and you feel the system is against you and you're vulnerable. It can push you over the edge. And I think when the PIP cuts come in, the personal independence payment cuts come in, there are going to be consequences. I mean, and some of them are going to be horrible.
That's the important point. I mean, the coroner says the actions were in the context of her benefits having been wrongly withdrawn by the Department of Work and Pensions. The Department of Work and Pensions say at the inquest they're deeply regretful, and there were a number of opportunities to have picked up concerns about Jodie. We're very sorry about that. In her case, she took her own life after her benefits were wrongly withdrawn. What we know as a result of the government's new reforms, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of people who are going to have their benefits withdrawn because the rules are changing. 250,000
people, including 50,000 children, pushed into poverty. That is grim, and a Labour government should not be doing that. No government should be doing it.
It's always a warning, that you have to understand what you're doing before you set off and do it.
Yeah, and it's an absolutely horrifying case. We're going to actually be speaking to Joy Dove about her daughter and what went terribly wrong after 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, the search continues in Praia de Luge to find any trace of what happened to little Meline Macan after she went missing back in 2007. And the Star this morning is one of the papers which is reporting an interview with the prime suspect in the case. Christian Bruckner invited a TV crew into the prison near Hanover, where he is serving a 7-year sentence for rape. He claimed he was wrongly convicted. He's due for release later this year, which is one of the reasons that the pressure is on German police who are part of this search out in Portugal. He says he was assaulted by another inmate. At least one rib was broken. He stays in his cell 24 hours a day. And when he's freed, he'll go into hiding, as he's well known. And he's most looking forward to a proper steak with a beer. I mean, it's kind of stomach-churning, isn't it?
It is.
We were thinking it's very unusual for a camera crew to... I
don't think it would be allowed
Europe,
in a British prison.
I don't think it would be allowed here. I mean,
outcry.
Obviously, over in America, I mean, I've been into prisons with a camera and interviewed inmates, but it's very unusual and pretty distasteful, although I suppose
Convicted
if you're...
rapist with paedophile offences and he's been given airtime. And he's at paedophiles. You can't believe a word they say.
He's a rapist, convicted rapist.
Yeah.
It's a
72-year-old woman.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely horrific. Look,
and he's not cooperating with the police.
Well, he denies any involvement in the disappearance of Meline.
And he hasn't been charged.
No, he hasn't.
On that.
But I mean, this search is obviously a very expensive search, and police must think that there is going to be some sort of evidence found in that search. And you do wonder, if nothing's found this week, because as we understand it, it continues until Friday, what then happens in this case?
I heard someone saying it's the last chance search, because 18 years on, any evidence, DNA sort of would be disintegrating, decomposing. They've built on some of the land that they've been looking at. It's very difficult.
But I'm impressed the seriousness the German police are taking this when it was a British girl in Portugal, although the suspect is German. But you can't. The clock's ticking, and it has. We've had a lot of last chances on this. I don't think there'll ever be an end to last chances until there is a conclusive end to this.
The search of Maddie is a big story in Germany too. In fact, worldwide.
Yeah.
Can I, we've got just a couple of minutes left, can I take something very important happening in Parliament today? The Product Regulation and Metrology Bill is being discussed by members of Parliament. We are going to be discussing that on our programme later. A very important amendment from the Liberal Democrats, their trade spokesman Clive Jones, who's asking for an amendment to the bill to protect consumers from shrinkflation.
This is the phenomenon.
This is the phenomenon.
Yeah.
The products are getting smaller, but they're costing either the same or more.
Yeah.
And Freddos, which in our day were 10p, are now 35p.
I have one here. I mean, look at it.
You're not supposed to eat it.
It's tiny. Freddos used to be...
Did they? Are you sure?
No, Freddos are the same size.
Are they?
Yeah, you've just got bigger.
Yeah.
When I was little, Mars bars used to be huge.
Yeah, they've definitely shrunk.
Yeah, Mars bars were huge and you were small. That's why proportionately
I think I have grown less than Mars bars.
Right. But it is like...
It's a phenomenon going on. They are the weights of...
It's a con.
Especially in multi-packs.
Yeah, it's a con.
They're selling things smaller.
Yeah.
And the shops are not telling people...
No, they're not.
That the cost per unit has gone, is gone up.
If you buy a bag, Chris, fill the crisp bag. Hardly any in there.
Yes, and you can only get half a packet in a packet,
Clive Jones,
don't you?
the Liberal Democrats, is wanting to amend the Products Regulation and Metrology Bill
I think he'll be very
to
popular.
say that supermarkets have to tell you if you are being shrinkflated.
Very good point.
Yeah, I suppose you could always look now at the grams per pence or pounds, if you look. I do that when I...
On my online shopping, it does that. If you go onto... I shop on Tesco online, and it tells you how much per 100 grams. So you can directly compare.
It doesn't surprise me you're doing this, Susanna, but I think most people are not that sophisticated in their approach to shopping. You'd have to actually compare it to what it was last time. But you need a spreadsheet.
It's sneaky, because you notice a price rise, but if they reduce what you get... I mean, I got a pack of bacon at the weekend. I thought there'd be 8 rashers in it. There were only 6. There used to be 8 in it, and I didn't realise until I got home.
Same cost.
It's like...
I didn't know it was any reduction.
Our Mars bars are on Ozempic, and we're not being told.
Well, then don't eat them.
Yeah, but oh my God, the nanny state.
No, stage
the
of
nanny
protest.
state really
Stage of protest.
The nanny state.
You don't need them.
We have put a researcher onto Ed's claim that Mars bars used to be huge when he was little.
They were
and
huge.
are now tiny now that we're all grown up. Mars bars have shrunk from 62.5 grams to 51 grams since the 1970s.
I mean,
that is tiny.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
and what do they cost?
Stop opening them.
What is the phrase? One bite and it's gone.
But may I say though, if we're combating,
they used to be
obesity, it's probably better.
Oh yeah, but
are you now going to eat a whole Mars bar and a whole Freddo?
Live on
I think
TV.
I'll do Freddo's first. If you want, we can share.
No. There's some things you should never see, and the problem is I will not be able to erase that.
What's that Disney cartoon where they eat the spaghetti? Lady in the Tramp?
No. Is there a doctor here to help?
You can keep that all to yourself, Ed. I'm trying to get my waist to shrink, so I'm not going to have chocolate for breakfast.
Go shopping and ignore your app.
Kevin, Andrew, thanks very much indeed. We're going to try and get the Lib Dem campaigner on shrinking Mars bars on the programme this morning.
Good on him.
Yes.
I mean, it's the first time the Product Regulation and Metrology Bill has been mentioned this much ever.
But all these little bits of legislation going through House of Commons Parliament really matter.
They do. The cost of living crisis is the biggest
people will be cheering the TV at that Liberal Democrat. He's eaten it.
He's gone, yeah.
There's going to be no waist shrinking around here with that Mars bar on display. Thanks for both.